today we want to talk a little about herbicide carryover because, hey, we're going into the 2016 season. Maybe there's something that you remember now at the last minute. Oh yeah, I did that last year. I had this soil condition. I probably need to rethink my cropping plan for this year.
All right, I want to talk about a couple real common ones that are being used to fight pigweed across the country. Treflan pre-emerge. There's a number of farmers across the country that have gone back to using Treflan that really got away from it with the advent of Roundup Ready soybeans. Now we're getting back into using Treflan again, but we forgot some of the lessons that we learned. First of all, using a full rate of Treflan, like 2 pints, can oftentimes lead to some carryover. If you've got pigweed and you want to push rates trying to stop pigweed, don't do that with Treflan. Use an additional product instead.
What I would do is switch over to Prowl or Sonaland. You don't have the carryover issues with Prowl or Sonaland, so use the full rate of Prowl or Sonaland. Whenever you're going to use Treflan, cut that rate back to 1.5 pints unless you're going to rotate to a crop that's safe, or unless you're down south and you have that many more months. We talk a lot about carryover because we live in South Dakota and we farm in South Dakota. We have much colder temperatures. We just don't have time to break down these herbicides. And that's probably where this whole discussion needs to start. Hey, if I have more rainfall and if I have more heat and more months of heat, I have a lot less concern with carryover risk of anything.
All right, back to the pigweed issue. The other thing is post-emerge in soybeans. FlexStar is the #1 choice for many farmers across the country, but FlexStar has a 10-month rotational restriction to corn. So if you're using in soybeans FlexStar late in the season, say you get into July, all of a sudden now you aren't able to plant corn till at least May, and if you had an exceptionally dry year, if you had a droughty year after the 1st of July when you put on that FlexStar, boy, even the 1st of May may be pushing it a little bit in certain soil.
Well, here's what I want to focus on. Darren's talking about soybeans. I want to talk about some tricky things. So people get confused when, oh, I'm going to use Prefix and then I'm going to use FlexStar post-emerge. Well, you just used FlexStar twice and now you're stuck with planting soybeans this year. I'm going to use Authority First or Sonic pre-emerge, and then I think I'm going to come along with First Rate post-emerge. Guess what? You just used First Rate twice. Now our recommendation is plant soybeans again this year. I'm going to use Enlight or Envive, and oh, that should be good. It's got Valor in it, and there's something else. What the other thing it has in it is Classic, and if you've got soil pH that's high, and especially if you farm in the North Country, if you're in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, something like that, guess what? You're probably going to have a carryover issue. So you got to be really concerned about what you're using, and I just get frustrated with agronomists out there who are looking at, I just want to control weeds today. Let's just worry about today. We got to think about the long term. You got to think about next year and what your rotational restrictions are.
Well, I see this a lot of times in different wheat growing areas in our country. Guys want to use Finesse, guys want to use Ally, and they want... Yeah, they want to use these products out in their wheat crop, and all of a sudden, wow, it's going to last in those fields for possibly a number of years. And wow, if you want to rotate back to soybeans or some other crop, you're going to have some serious issues out in those fields. And there's so many good killers of weeds out in wheat fields, we don't need to use those kinds of products.
No, but even if you use the 2 most popular ones, Husky, you can't just rotate to anything, and Wide Match, you can't just rotate to anything. So the big take home here is we just encourage you, look at the rotational restrictions on the label. Then, if you're in a cold area or in a dry area, and especially if you're in both, I might even add some extra time on. So if the rotational restriction says 6 months, I might wait 9. If it says 10 months, I might wait 12. And it all depends. You've got to use some common sense. Hey, if I cut the rate and I had a hot and wet year, well, chances are I'm not too worried about carryover. But you know what? If I used some atrazine last year, and after I used it, it got bone dry, and then we had an early freeze up, and
I have a high pH, and I have a low CEC soil.
Right, exactly. So you got to look at your soil conditions in addition to all these other things. All we're trying to say is just take a look at this, use some common sense, and don't get yourself caught. Darren and I have both been in so many fields over the years where we found carryover issues, and the guy just didn't even realize it. So take a look at this real hard, what you did last year before you plant that crop here in 2016.
Herbicide carryover can be a big issue because you may be out there trying to kill weeds like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up next.